proposal for the U.S. to take over Gaza, to rebuild the war-torn territory, and have Palestinian refugees resettle in other parts of the region. Rubio will start his trip in Germany at the Munich Security Conference, where plans to end the war in Ukraine are likely at the top of the agenda. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Rubio just finished his first trip that started in Panama, discussing the U.S. effort to retake control of the canal there. Rubio also got commitments from the leaders of El Salvador and Guatemala to accept illegal immigrants from any country, not just theirs. Ones with criminal records or considered security threats arrested in federal immigration raids and deported out of the United States. As Russia's war in Ukraine keeps raging and President Trump pushes for peace talks, Ukraine's leader has a new demand.
President Volodymyr Zelensky wants Ukraine to be part of NATO, but if that can't happen, he says his country must have a nuclear deterrent. Ukraine gave up its supply of Soviet-era nukes in 1994 in exchange for guarantees that its sovereignty would be respected. President Zelensky believes Russia's invasion proves that deal has fallen short. But the US envoy to Russia and Ukraine, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, says rearming Ukraine with nuclear weapons is not going to happen, telling Fox News, "We're a government of common sense." Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
Now back to that jobs report. Despite a bigger than expected slowdown in hiring last month from December, the unemployment rate did go down to 4%. And on Wall Street, stock futures mixed. Barely up for the Dow, barely down for the NASDAQ. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News.
Lawrence County depends on WDXE News. On the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3. WDXE.
And it is time for Stan Pierchoski and Bulletproof Estate Planning with Pierchoski Estate Law. And my good friend, Stan. How are you, buddy?
Good morning, Jeff. I'm doing well.
Good.
Doing
good.
well.
Yeah, we've looked forward to today, getting to talk to you again. Been a whole week.
Did you really look forward to it?
Well, sure. Absolutely.
I got you. No, it has been about a week, and I have had a busy week. But two things. Had a lot of things going on.
Yes.
But two, my entire crew is in Florida, in Orlando, enjoying part of Disney. I think it's the MGM Studios or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Without me. So.
Well, how did that happen?
Well, it's intentional, of course.
Yes.
The three people that work for me, the three girls that work for me, and my wife went with them, and Alex works in the office with me, and
so they left you completely alone.
And I'm holding down the shop myself, and I'm also at home alone, and it's tough.
Well, they probably picked a good time to leave town because of all the sickness that's going around in.
Maybe. Of course, you're going to be mingling in big crowds in Orlando. And stuff.
But maybe they don't have it like we have it up here. There's been.
But I'm sort of wondering. I'm by myself, and it's like, it's like the coffee's not made in the morning, and who's gonna make my lunch? And when I get home for dinner, I have to make it. I jest, of course.
You just got to get it on your own, man.
I jest, of course, but it's amazing how spoiled you can get.
Oh, I know.
And I do miss. I hope they're having a good time.
My wife is spoiled.
I was actually referring to the other way around.
Oh, okay, okay.
But anyway, I think I'll make it through.
I better not comment much more than I just said.
Yeah,
so.
I think I'll get through it.
Good deal.
But anyway, at the office it's kind of hectic. So if you call me or anything, I invite people to call all the time.
Sure.
If you call and I doesn't get an answer right away, be patient. I've got a million things to do, but it's hard to just take the calls and stuff. So I try to keep up with them and call back.
They may decide to stay down there.
They might. They might. I don't know. I've been to Disney World several times. And this isn't Disney World. This is part of, I can't think, it's like the MGM Studios or there's something studio.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I've been to all that stuff at least once, and Disney World itself a couple times. And I just kind of vowed never to go again. I mean, I get no enjoyment whatsoever out of it.
I've never been.
Well, I don't know. Some people love it.
I think I would like to go, but I've never been.
I have a sister-in-law that would live there if you let her.
Yeah.
And just goes 5 times a year and sees the same thing over and over. Just not my cup of tea. I mean, I've seen it, and it's very impressive, but once is enough.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, they're down there, and they're apparently enjoying it because they send me little videos and pictures, and they're having a blast. it's the girls bonding trip. So they're all getting along.
That's
well.
nice to do, though.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Get away from everything for a little bit. Kind of recharge your circuits and all that.
Right,
so
that's right.
it's a good deal. By the way, this hour, of course, the phone lines are open. If people would like to talk to Stan, have questions regarding estates, estate planning, and wills, trust, all that kind of stuff, that's what this is about. And we've learned a lot over the couple of years we've been doing this.
That's right. And the number is 931-766-9393.
That is correct. And we got Peggy calling already this morning.
I haven't even started the topic.
Hadn't even started yet. We'll see what's going on. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, tell Mr. Pierchoski I've missed him. After me and Joe, I've got to get my mind settled here. Two things happened this week, and I thought you might review them. A man that's pretty educated, that's a new widower that I know, has mentioned something that tells me he doesn't know a lot about wills. He said, well, I told my daughter the way it's written, the will go to me. And then he said, I think I want it, he thinks he's finished, but he says, but if something happened to her first, then I'd want it to go to the nephews. Well, I pulled up on the internet, and I didn't tell him this because I wasn't sure how to handle it. It would actually go to his brothers and sisters if I'm, and I thought you might review that. Some other people might be confused about that because I'm going to address it. Then a man called in the Dave Ramsey show, and it wasn't Dave Ramsey, and he was at the opposite end on another issue. It sounded like he needed somebody like you, but he was calling them because he was seeing someone, but he had $17 million, and he was trying to sort through how to leave it to his children, but he wants it to go on in perpetuity, that they leave it to somebody else. And I just thought those two things were really interesting, that some of the review about and specific examples as opposed to generalities. It's not a criticism. It's just I hear what you say, and I know how I'd handle it, but sometimes I would like to be able to explain it very simple to somebody else.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Listen, if that fellow's got $17 million, I would like to help him.
There you go. Let me start with that one. And,
yes.
I won't spend too much time on it because we don't deal with those kind of estates around here very much. But if you want to, you can leave it to whoever you want, and that's how we're going to go to the first question. But if he wants to leave it, first of all, you have to have something where you memorialize what you have in mind. If you don't, the state of Tennessee decides where it goes, right?
Yes.
So you need a will or a trust or something where you can memorialize what you want. And if you want it to go on in perpetuity, that's a little cumbersome because we have what is called the law against perpetuities, and you can't do dynasty trusts anymore where you leave it in trust and you say in there, I just keep leaving. I leave it to you, and when you're done with it, you have to leave it to your kids, and they have to leave it to their kids. That offends the law against perpetuities. But the one way we accomplish that is we can leave it to our heirs in a trust, and we can say, in that trust, that the terms and conditions of that trust, or you can leave it to your children and your children. And the way we get around the law of perpetuities is the trust has a beginning and the trust has an end. And you can keep it going from generation to generation as long as the trust exists. Now, in Tennessee, the longest you can make a trust exist is 360 years, which is, in my opinion, almost perpetuity.
Yeah, we've covered that before. Yeah.
So again, I don't think I should spend too much more time on that. If you got $17 million and you want to do something a little out of the box, I'm sure you can hire somebody that would try to do something like that for you.
360 years from now, $17 million will buy a carton of eggs.
There you go. If we're here and the eggs are here.
And the eggs are here, yes.
So the other one was, let me think if I can remember. Now, he said he wanted to give property, she said to me, and I guess that meant her.
No, I don't think that's what she was saying.
When you talk to me and you say me, she, they, you sort of have to tell me who the players are. So
are you talking about the widower?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he had a will that left his property to somebody. And the concern was, what if that person passes away first?
Yes.
Is that what you got?
Either that, or for some reason they weren't going to get that. He wanted to know if he could get it to somebody else.
Well, I always do that in every one of my trusts, even on my wills. I always say, okay, if you got your 3 kids, and you say, I'm going to leave it to my 3 kids, a third, okay? For simplicity.
Yes.
I always put in there okay, what if you leave it to your children, a third, if any of them predecease you, where do you want their third to go? Because it has to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so I at least go one level into that. And so,
Yes.
and then there's some choices, there's a choice of what we call persterpes, which means it goes to their descendants, kind of down through the bloodline flow.
Yeah.
There's another one called per capita, which means it kind of goes back into the pot and gets distributed to the then living children, which would change. Let's say you have one predeceased child, that would change the other two's share from a third to a half because, that is a valid choice that leaves out the deceased children's heirs, if that's what you want. I mean, some people might. And the third choice is you leave it to named people or organizations.
Yes.
So, like a lot of people will ask me, well, if it doesn't go to the child, will it go to their spouse? Now, most people don't want it to go to an in-law, but the answer is yes, it could. We just have to say it. Nothing happens automatically. You would have to say, and here's something common. If I leave it to my son and he predeceases, then I want it to go to his spouse, but only if she is his spouse at his death.
Yes.
You don't want it. In other words, you want to make sure it's because they're still an in-law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you could leave it to the mailman if you wanted to. You just have to say it so that because when you pass away, the trust instrument controls the descent and distribution.
Right.
It goes where you say.
Right.
So you have to say it. So
Yes.
I never leave it leave it to the three kids, a third, and silent about the rest. Because if you are silent about that, or if you're silent about anything, and it comes up, and we need an answer to it. Okay, so if you say you have three kids, I have three kids.
Yes.
If we say a third, each of our three kids, and one of them does predecease, but the instrument doesn't address that.
Yes.
Then we have to go to the trust code. It's what I call gap fillers, and it's kind of like a default value.
Yeah.
And that will control. And the default value in the trust code is that first one I said, persterpes, which is kind of the most common one anyway. Meaning, if my son predeceases me, his share is going to be equally divided among his bloodline descendants. So if he has three children, they'll each get a third of his third.
Yes.
Is how that works.
Yes.
That's what persterpes mean. And if either of those children predecease, it just dilutes from there.
Yes.
You get into some really interesting fractional math. So.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But the most important thing about that question is, if you want it to go somewhere, or if you want to control how it goes, it has to be. You have to decide what it is and memorialize that in an enforceable instrument that is
Yes.
enforceable at death.
Yes.
And the only two choices you have is a will or a trust. Now,
Yeah.
you know me, I'm biased. The trust is better because of many reasons, but they both are instruments that are legally valid at death. And,
Yeah.
like I said, I think I may have talked one time or another. I think I do on my Sunday night show about some odd wills that people have done through the years, odd requests. And there's some things in there where it's just that they all those things were upheld. Here's one. There was some guy. He wasn't anybody important. They just mentioned his name, and I didn't really. But anyway, he was a philanthropist, had a fair amount of money, and he either didn't have heirs or didn't like them. But what he did, he was in Portugal. And he just took the Lisbon phone book and picked out 70 names at random.
Yeah.
And left it equal share to each of them. Well, he had several $1 million. And, what happened was these people just got a kind of phone call or a letter in the mail saying, hey, and so it was enforced. It had nothing to do with family. But because he said it, that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So you kind of use that as an example. So when people say, what happens if I leave my money to my kids and my kids are gone or something like that?
Yeah.
It's like, well... And I don't want to be flippant when I say the answer, but the answer is whatever you want. Whatever we say in the document is what will happen. That's what the courts will uphold.
Yeah. It struck me when she was talking there about that he can't just arbitrarily decide something different than the will says.
Who's he?
Whoever this widower is.
Is he?
This widower he's talking about, that the will said this, but that's not going to happen, so I want to do it this way. He can't just decide what to do. He's got to do what the will says.
As a beneficiary, he can't decide anything.
Yeah.
That's right. The will decides it.
Yep. She may clarify, I guess.
Okay.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I wanted to clarify the widower has an only child, so he's not thinking past the only child, and he is assuming that the next in line, according to the state of Tennessee, will be the nephews. And I just wanted to confirm, I thought that the next in line would be the sisters and brothers. And I'll hang up. That was the case. I mean, it's maybe confusing. I think I'm going to know what to tell him. I'm pretty sure it's the brothers and sisters, but I kind of wanted him to confirm that, because if something were to happen to him, then it wouldn't be going to the persons that he thought it would be going to logically.
Is the widower the widower the writer of the will?
Is the widower the writer of the will?
Yes, the writer. Actually, what he was doing was working with his daughter on her will, because she doesn't have any children and she's not married. And so he was just explaining to her, if you don't have, I don't know, he tries not to meddle, they're older. And he was just kind of explaining to me that it would automatically come to him. Is that what she wanted? But then I thought it almost ironic for him to say something to the effect that he would want it to go to the nephews, when that's not the way the state of Tennessee operates. I wouldn't think, if you didn't have it in your will.
No. Okay.
Is that clear?
I hope.
Okay. Well, anyway, I know if people have confusion on that, that's not my problem. But I just thought that might be because it's somebody I know.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. All right. Well, very good. Well, here's the thing. If I'm understanding things, if you have a will, it does what the will says, and if it doesn't address it, then the state takes over.
Well, that's right, and that's where I think the misunderstanding is.
Yes.
If you have a will, there's really no automatic next person in line. The person that's next in line is who you say is next in line. Mm-hmm. And like I said, if you're silent on who's next in line, then the laws of intestate succession take over,
right,
and that fills the gap. Now, those are just like you would think. If you pass away, the laws of intestate succession look to see if you have a surviving spouse and or any children.
Yeah.
So let's just use you. Let's kill you off.
All right. I'm a goner.
Sorry, it's a Friday, and
I
always kill the husband off first in my office. So,
yes, that's a good way to do it.
So Jeff gets taken out, and he has a will, and the will says, if I leave. I take it back. You have no will, because we want the laws of intestate. We want the laws of intestate succession to take over. So you have no will. Well, the state of Tennessee is going to say, all right, part of it's going to go to your surviving spouse, and part is going to go to your children. So most people, when they write a will, they say to my spouse, but if they're predeceased, then to the children. Yeah. It surprises people to know that at a first death without a will, the children are going to be involved.
Yes.
So in the language says goes to a spouse gets a third, a surviving spouse gets a third, or up to a child share. Now, the only time they would get up to a child share is if there was only one child, and then they would get a half. Okay. Every other circumstance, the surviving spouse gets a third, and the surviving children. The children they share the other 2/3.
That's right.
And it's a per stirpage kind of thing. So if the children are not available, what gets us to this, then the other children are available. Okay, it looks downward to your descendants. Okay, and see how many children you have. Now, if you have 3 children and one of them is predeceased, he's not out of the loop. Then they go through the predeceased child and look to see if he has any descendants, and then that share gets divided among those folks. Yeah, the descendants. Now, if there are no descendants, then it will go to the other beneficiaries. Okay, and there's a hierarchy. So the hierarchy works like this. The first place they look is down to see if you have any children. Okay. The second place they look, surprisingly, is up to see if your parents are still alive. Next place they look, if each one of these fails, they go to the next one, right? Right. And if you don't have any parents, the next place it looks for the testator, the writer of the will, it goes sideways and looks to the siblings. Yes. Okay? Then it starts going down the rabbit holes of like the nephews, okay? The siblings' children. But you really have to have. It's hard to get to there. They usually run into somebody along the way before you get there. But it keeps going for several more steps. So I think to advise him that where it's going to go after him may not be, because the state may or may not take over. Because she said several times, the state takes over, or according to the laws of the state, here's where it's going to go. Yeah. I don't know if the laws of the state are even going to come into play. They're only going to come into play if it has to go somewhere and the instrument is silent on that scenario. Yeah, yeah. So as long if it's not addressed in the will at all, it is silent, then and only then, really, would the state take over or decide
this dilemma.
Now, there's also something you can do. Let's say it was going to the widower, like she said, and he wanted to go to the nephews, but he was still alive.
Yeah.
You can do a disclaimer. You can disclaim an inheritance.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But that could be a two-edged sword, and here's why. If you disclaim, you can't disclaim the inheritance and say send it to the nephews. Okay.
Yeah.
When you say I'm doing a disclaimer, it's okay. Where does it go from the original will? If you treat that person as if they predeceased, so it's governed by the original will. So the disclaimer really is only for somebody that just doesn't want it, that really doesn't have much of a care in where it's going to go afterward.
Yeah.
Because you can't control that.
It would be better if he really wanted to have it, is to take the inheritance and then just give it to them.
If he's alive, then take the inheritance, write a will, and says it goes to them, or just give it to them as a gift during life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That or leave it in his will.
Yeah.
So
that would make more sense.
That was a little convoluted, but I think the point was, I think the point is, you write the rule book. You've heard me say that before.
Yeah.
You write the rule book.
It boils down to that, doesn't
whatever
it?
you want done,
Yeah.
memorialize it, and that's what will get done.
Yeah, it boils down to that. And again, it boils down to you must go ahead and address it. Take the time to call Stan. And
Well, the laws of intestate succession may not be what you want.
yeah.
I had a case not too long ago where, the word surviving spouse. The word spouse is a legal term. Okay. I know everybody uses it, but I mean it's a legal term. If you have, I had a case where these folks were estranged for years.
Yeah.
Okay. And they have separate property now. They just never got divorced. Okay. Now, when you're, marriage is, legal marriage is a legal term. And when you're married with a legal marriage or statutory marriage, then you have somebody called a spouse.
Right.
Now, the only way to not be a spouse or to end a legal marriage, there's only two ways. One is by death, and the other one is by statutory divorce.
Yeah.
There are no two other ways. So these folks just turned around and went their separate ways, and now I'm dealing with the wife who's in care, and we're trying to get her eligible for TennCare. Now, what we're running into is, there's different rules when you're married than when you're single. Okay?
Right.
And now we have remember I said when you're dealing for TennCare and somebody's in care and it's a spouse and a couple, you have the institutionalized spouse, which is the one that's in care, and you have the community spouse, which is the one that's home. And with the eligibility process, they look at the assets of both of them. Remember I've said there's no mine, yours, or there's only ours when you're married and we're in the beginning of this process.
Correct.
So they want to look at everything that she owns, and she does have separate property, and they want to look at everything he owns, because everything he owns is available for his spouse's cost of care. Well, they've been estranged, and he's kind of like, I'm not interested in that. So we have what we call an unwilling spouse. Okay, now what's the problem with that? Well, they're married. Okay,
Yeah.
and when you're married, you have an obligation to each other, and you can't just walk away from it.
Sure.
So we have to jump through some hoops to show that, hey, we've spoken to the gentleman, and we're trying to get, but he's being uncooperative.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to do is, if I can satisfy the fact that and that's a TennCare legal term, unwilling spouse, if I can get that category established, now I can treat my client, the applicant, as a single person. Because if it's unwilling, then we have no community spouse. And so if you have no community spouse, then we can treat her as if she's single and get her eligible.
Interesting.
So it's cumbersome. So, there's a theory that was out a little while ago, and I don't hear about it much anymore, but, when you're trying to get into long-term care, to get divorced. I mean, it's not like you don't like each other or anything. You could be very much in love, but they think it's as an eligibility strategy, get divorced. I am not a big fan of that, because there's a lot of blowback on that you're not going to see coming, and it will come.
Yeah, I would think so.
But anyway, when you get to the spouses, the laws of intestate succession, the state has already decided where your stuff. If you didn't say a will, if you didn't say it in a will or trust, the state has already decided where it's going to go, what the percentages are, and that may or may not be what you want to have happen.
Right.
It's usually not. But I mean, the times when it's probably the same is when you got somebody and you have a sole heir, one child.
Right.
I mean, then it's going to pretty much work out the same way if you have the will or don't have the will. But it doesn't leave anything to charities if that's what you wanted to do. It certainly doesn't leave anything to grandchildren if that's what you wanted to do. We get that a lot. I want to leave the grandchildren $5,000 each.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, you don't get an automatic generation skipping effect. You know, you have to say, I want to leave it to the grandchildren.
Right.
There's nothing like that in the laws of intestate succession.
Okay.
You get to the grandchildren only through the fact that their parents passed away, and you're flowing through on this per stirpes concept. You know, so anyway. Okay, good question. Now, something I want to talk about. First of all, I wanted to remind everybody, we had a seminar here not too long ago, back on the 25th. Correct. And we have another one coming up. It's not here, but on March the 22nd. That's a Saturday. And, of course, Saturday seminars are done at 10 o'clock in the morning. We call it Will's Trust in the Nursing Home. And it's going to have it over in Pulaski that Saturday at the American Legion. And I can't think of the address right now. I think it's something like 416 American Legion Drive. I mean, there's a road there, and that's the only thing on it. But you can kind of see it from the square. You can see it from my office right there.
Yeah.
I'll get the address and have it later. But, it's not too early to RSVP for that. We've already got some. So that's a nice little venue. They've remodeled it quite a bit, and it's real pleasant. And I don't have to tote my big screen TV over there because I can just plug into theirs.
That's fantastic.
I noticed when I came to this seminar on the 25th, I carried my big screen TV in. I looked up, and there was a great big one on the wall right behind me that wasn't there last time I was here.
It hadn't been there all that long, but it's up there now.
Yeah,
it sure is.
I don't know if it's big enough to, we had such a crowd at the last seminar, I had to use a PA system.
I'm glad to hear they had a good crowd there.
Yeah, it was big.
So, that's right.
So, so a question that came up, and this has come up many times before, and I've had this discussion with CPAs or attorneys that do tax returns, those kind of folks, okay? And it keeps coming up. And so it has to do with if you have a trust. Now, especially or particularly the asset protection trust you hear me talk about. The trust we talk about if you want to protect your property from long-term care. We do this asset protection trust. Mm-hmm. Now, the questions come up. I have people that go to the bank and they say, hey, I did one Mr. Stan's asset protection trust, and I want to move my bank account into the trust.
Yes.
And a bank or somebody will tell them, well, you have to have an EIN number, because here's the way it works. When you have a trust, it has to have an identifying number, okay? Now, now what we typically use is the husband's Social Security number. If it's an individual trust, and of course we use that Social Security number. Now, that Social Security number appears nowhere in the trust documents, okay?
Okay.
But it has to have a number.
Okay.
So the IRS requires that. Now, if you go to the bank and you want to put a bank account in there, they'll ask that question, and you just say, well, it's the husband's Social Security number. Now, they'll have the number, but it doesn't appear in the trust documents at all.
Okay.
Now, some folks will say because it's an irrevocable trust, it has to have an EIN. Okay. So this came up again just this week, early in the week before Alex actually left, and she had asked me, could I write something up that she could tell people on the phone, or they could give it to them if they asked for it, about this question that keeps coming up. And so I did. And I want to go over that just a little bit because, an EIN is an employer identification number, okay? And it's a 9-digit number. It looks just like a Social Security number, but it's not really for a person. It's for usually something like a trust or an estate or a deceased person, stuff like that. Because if you have a trust and it's identified by your Social Security number, it cannot use your Social Security number after your death. Then it does have to get an EIN for the short period of time it's going to be in administration.
So the EIN stands for what again?
Employer identification number.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with employer.
Yeah.
It's just a 9-digit number that's not a person's Social Security number.
Okay.
Now, there's pros and cons to it. The answer is, do I have to get an EIN for my irrevocable trust? The answer is no, you do not have to. And the reason you don't is because the trusts we do are called grantor trusts. And a grantor trust is a specific name, and as far as the IRS is concerned, they say it's tax neutral. And the trust is also what we call estate inclusive, meaning at death, all the property in the trust is included in your estate. And that's what we want. Because if we do that, then the trust does not have to file its own tax return. So here's the way it works. You have a piece of property. We'll use a piece of real property and use a rental piece of property. A good example.
Okay.
Say you have a piece of property or your house for that matter, and you're renting a room in your house. You get $500 a month rental income renting this room, right? Well, when you do that, the IRS says you got to report your income, in this case your rental income, on your personal 1040 form. Either individual or married, filing jointly, but on your 1040 form, right? And report the income and then pay the tax on it. Now, if you put that piece of property in trust and you're still renting the room, the IRS says you still have to report that on your personal tax return. As far as we're concerned, the trust is tax neutral. You're not getting a benefit or you're not getting a deficit because your income producing property is in a trust or not in a trust.
Okay.
It's invisible to them. And so nothing changes for you, the trustor. Everything you've done tax-wise before you put it in the trust is identical to what you do after you put it in the trust. Now, if you go out and get an EIN, that will trigger the trust having to file its own tax return because a trust is interpreted under law as a person. And when you get an EIN, it's got its own personal number. And you don't want to fill out your own tax return and fill out a trust tax return every year. I think that's way too cumbersome. I would never recommend that. Now, some people like to do it for reasons I don't think are the best reasons, like anonymity or something. Mm-hmm. They might want to do that. But that comes with it, and you don't want to have to file. That's a 1041, a trust return. So it's a disadvantage, in my opinion. I always recommend Social Security number. The only disadvantage of using your Social Security number, which is really, in my opinion, not a disadvantage, is at death or at the second death of a couple, that trust does need to get an EIN for the purposes of administration. Now, that's not really a disadvantage that you have to do it. If you already had an EIN, you wouldn't have to do it. So I don't think but the EIN is like just a couple of clicks away on a computer. It's that simple to get.
Interesting.
So I think the disadvantages far outweigh getting the EIN for a trust. Now, so you do not have to. I've had this conversation with CPAs and they show me documentation and I point out to them the two parts. Part where it talks about it being a grantor trust, mm-hmm. which means the IRS is going to consider all the income generated by anything in that trust as the trustor's income, as that person's income.
Yeah.
So it's treated as if it was never in the trust in the first place. And the fact that everything in the estate is included in the estate at death. It's called estate inclusion. Now, there are trusts out there. I don't do any of these kind of trusts. But the trusts out there everything's excluded from the estate, and they are non-grantor trusts. And those are completely different animals, and those do have to have their own separate number. They do have to file tax returns. They are, they're tax avoidance techniques, and I don't do any of that stuff. It doesn't have anything really to do with estate planning. It's just ways to avoid paying tax on certain property. But you got to divorce yourself of all ownership because it is not even included in your estate at death. So you have. And I don't want to get into the weeds on that because I don't even do it. I probably not. I know enough about it that I don't want to do those. I don't think there's much of a market for it. Maybe for people with $17 million and want to not pay tax on certain property, right. There might be an interest in that. But for the general people that I deal with, no. But that, so this concept of an EIN versus a Social Security number, I think it may keep some people from doing it because they heard, well, I got to get an EIN. Well, if you've heard that and it's keeping you from doing some trust work, don't. Or give me a call and we'll talk about it some more. Schedule and we'll come in and we'll discuss it. I'll be more than happy to. I stand behind that answer.
Right.
Because that's what the IRS opinion letters say, and that's what the whole industry operates on.
Right.
So anyway, the bottom line was I'd written up a little page of that, and I gave it to Alex, and when people call, she can refer to that or give it to them or just explain to them what's on there. And that's my, that's my recommendation. So
interesting.
Yeah. Well,
that's very interesting.
Different.
And,
yeah, because that's one thing that's interesting that people don't know is your Social Security cannot be used after death. So even if you have a will and you pass away,
okay,
it has to you have to get an EIN number for that probate estate.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it can't be the person's Social Security number because it has no effect after death. So we
thought about that.
If we have a trust and we're using the husband's Social Security number and it's a joint trust, at his death, we usually generate a new certificate of trust that says the number we're using now is the survivors, the spouses.
Oh, okay.
Because it has to have one, and now they're the only one there.
Yeah. Okay. A lot to know.
Yeah,
there's a lot to know, man.
That's stuff for me to know, And if I'll be glad to explain how it works. But what happens? The way it comes to me is somebody calls me up and says, "Hey, I went to my tax guy. do my taxes, and they said, hey man, you got to have an EIN for this trust. You can't.
Yeah.
And you don't. And I have been successful in explaining it to those folks, because I'm not really explaining it. I'm just passing on the IRS paperwork and the documentation that supports what I'm saying.
Okay.
And then they see that and they say, okay, they get. I mean, those are the key words that they're looking for or not catching.
This may be out of category for you, but now an EIN number for a business, can that be used at this? If you have one of those, like for me, I probably have one for my business.
It's used to identify your business. It couldn't be used to identify your state.
So it's a different number if it has to be for the trust.
Trust is interpreted as a person under law.
Yes.
Business entity is not.
Okay.
It's kind of it's not really a person. It's a business entity.
Right.
It's kind of an entity that
that
never dies.
So if I'm incorporated over here in this business, we've got our tax ID number and all that kind of stuff. That's a different thing than this.
Well, it's an asset that you own, and that's how the asset is. The business is because the business enjoys the entity, like an LLC.
Yes.
So the limited liability of an LLC comes from the state of Tennessee. You don't just get it. They're the ones that give you that privilege.
That's right.
Or whatever, or partnership, whatever the advantages you get from that business entity comes from the state.
That's right.
From that authority. And so they identify that entity with that number. Now that number is a 9-digit number too. They just only has one hyphen in a different spot.
Right.
You typically need to get that to file your, because that has to file its own tax return.
Yeah.
If you're an LLC, your LLC has to file a tax return.
That's true.
It's an entity, but not a person.
Yes, exactly.
So, and it's an entity that typically never dies.
And you did have to mention taxes. So.
Yeah, well, it is. We are coming up on that, aren't we?
We are. It's time for that. In fact, I'm all over it, trying to get it all organized as we speak.
Yeah. I have people that do it, and I try to keep up with it, but it's hard.
It is.
And those people, the people I got are good, but I swear to gosh, everybody that does that seems to wait till the last minute.
Yeah. I've been terrible at waiting to the last minute.
That drives me crazy to get that close.
I've been terrible at waiting to the last minute. Get the last minute,
and then they ask for an extension. It's like, well, you can only do that once. You can't just keep extending it. You only get one. And you know what is surprising to me that if you don't know this, you need to know it. If you say, if April 15th comes around and you're just way behind the 8 ball and you say, I'm going to get an extension.
Yeah.
I just haven't got it all together.
Yeah.
You get an extension in time to file a return. You do not get an extension to pay the tax. The tax must be paid, or you're going to be penalized with penalties and late fees. Even if you don't know what it is, you have to take a stab at it.
Yeah, yeah. Even when you file an extension, you send them money.
That surprises a lot of people. Yeah. It doesn't mean you get it.
If you don't send the money, you will get penalized.
Yep, and you'll get late fees. You'll be late
fees, and they're not gentle with it.
So you need to even overestimate. Yeah. So if you're getting the extension because you're a little short on funds to pay what you owe, it's not going to help.
You better pay all you can.
Well, it's not going to help. It's not going to help. That's right. That's right. And and I think, is that fair? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think I want to go there.
We don't want to go there.
I guess it depends on which side you're arguing.
Go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah, right.
And hope for the best. It's 8:43, and we have Stan Pierchoski Estate Law. Located in Pulaski, Tennessee, by the way, right there on the square. The phone number at his office is 363-7222, and he's got the seminar coming up you don't want to miss. Last one was even though you charge nothing, it was a sellout crowd.
That's right. Almost standing room only. We used up all the tables in back there.
Isn't that neat? I'm glad to hear that. I was talking to someone just this past week who has listened to you regularly here. And has a business.
So he's the one, right?
Yeah. No, there's more than one. We were talking about how effective that the radio has been probably for getting a message out and getting people to think about this kind of thing, because you wouldn't normally maybe just think about it.
That's right.
That kind of stuff. So.
And I think it is effective. I get a lot of people that if I think to ask, where'd you hear?
Yeah.
A lot of them say Lawrenceburg on the radio, and I ask which one because I do one out of Nashville,
right?
And they say, a lot of times the answer is Lawrenceburg.
Oh yeah. Well, we're glad for that.
Yeah. This experiment of talk radio now, I think come around June or something. It'll be 2 years.
2 years this coming June.
I think, pretty sure that's it.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's been we've traveled a little. We've traveled a little together here doing this. We sure have.
Yeah. You're about ready to get your honorary estate planning degree.
I'm going to get my honorary degree. That's right.
Well, and you're in a good position to know a lot of this stuff, being in that real estate business.
Well, it does help.
It pops up a lot.
Listen, there have been times that have come up since you and I have been talking that I've been able to answer some questions that I might not have been able to answer before. So, Peggy wants to talk again.
Don't be giving any legal advice now.
Peggy wants to talk again. Good morning.
And
How
I'll
are
try
you?
to make it clear since it's personal.
Yeah.
I have grandchildren that are not old enough to work. I have thought about starting a little business where I could pay them, and not for tax purposes, but where they could earn a little income. Now, this is my question. Would I be better off to gift them money? And if I gifted them money, could I require work for it? Because I've heard you talk about, let's say if your children work a certain number of hours, you have to report it to the IRS over a certain number. So my question about the gifting and the business are, they would have to be completely separate or not? If he could discuss that just a little bit. Now, my grandchildren are in another state. I'm just thinking about this idea.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a little out of the wheelhouse, I guess. But
I was going to say, I'll be the first to admit that the part about the children and the hours and what the ages you can actually pay them to work, is out of my lane.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to talk to a tax person, I think. But I can address the issue of whether, she said, can I gift it, or if I gift it to him, do I have to require work? I mean, if you're requiring work for it, it's not a gift.
Right.
It's a compensation.
Yes.
And again, that goes back to, can you compensate a child if he's
Yes.
at a certain age? I mean,
certainly
if it's your own child, I would think no big deal.
Right.
But I mean, as far as calling it work or being employed, I think there's age limits that work on that.
There are. We're running into that with May has gotten to where she's up to where she can actually work at least part time. There are there are limited hours depending on their age, that kind of thing. May's got to be 16, so she's got a part time job, and that's okay. I think and I don't know what the rules are completely, but the employer did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was what mattered. But I've tried to hire her several times to rub my feet and can't do it.
Well, let me ask you this: does that 16-year-old child of yours file a tax return? Or let me put it this way: required to?
I'm not sure about that yet. We're heading to our first go around with that.
I wonder if maybe the parent has to do.
But she did receive, the 1099 or whatever it is, whatever it is.
No, I think that
she'll probably have to. Yeah.
Now I know it's so much different than when I was that old, when I was that young.
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to work. And I had to go get what they called working papers. And I can't remember what they were, but that's when I got the Social Security card.
Oh, okay.
But I was like 14 or something, and all I wanted to do was be a golf caddy, because that's about the only. At 14, that's the only thing anybody would hire me for.
You could do that.
I mean, other than shoveling snow or those kind of odd jobs. But,
yeah.
And I had to get those working papers, and I don't even know what they were, because at 14 I didn't care. I just signed it and said, "Let me work." So I'm sure there's rules, and I just don't know what they are. I just don't deal with child labor in any way, shape, or form. But let me just address the gift thing. And I know she said she didn't want to do it for tax purposes, but when you gift money to somebody, that's not income. That's a gift.
Right.
And again, the only person that pays taxes on a gift is the giver of the gift.
Right.
And the only time the giver of the gift pays taxes on the gift is if their sum total of their lifetime gifts plus their estate at death exceeds the federal exclusion allotment, which right now, as of January, is $13.99 million per person.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay tax, but then it's not a gift tax. It is the federal estate tax for every dollar over $13.99 million. And that's taxed as high as 40%. So it is now to understand how that works, because that plays in a lot with what people say, well, you can give away a certain amount of money to people every year.
Yes.
And yes, you can, but that has nothing to do with estate planning, really. You can give that property away, and they say, well, I don't know if it changed January. It doesn't change every January.
Yeah.
But I think it's around $18,000, or it was for 2024. I haven't heard that it changed, but it might have. But, where you can give $18,000 away, and the IRS says you don't have to file a gift tax return. You can give away more. You just have to file a gift tax return. Now, don't let a gift tax return scare you away. I have people that bend over backwards to give away $17,999.99 so that they don't cross this magical number.
Yeah.
There's nothing magical about it. What they're saying is, if it's less than $18,000, we're going to consider it de minimis, and we don't want to keep up with it.
Right.
But if it's more than $18,000, you got to file a gift tax return. There's never a gift tax ever.
Yeah.
It's an informational return. It's not even 1 page long. It's like the front of one page.
Yeah.
It's very short. It's just, who'd you give it to and how much. And so at death, they want to look at all the gifts you made. Mm-hmm. It's not, and bring it back into your estate. Now, I don't mean bring the money back in, but bring the value back in.
Okay.
And compare it to your estate to see if what you have at death, plus everything you gave away during your lifetime, is going to exceed that allotment. If it does, they're going to estate tax you on it.
Yeah.
I don't get estates like that around here.
Well,
So, just don't. So it's not a big deal. But
well, you hadn't dealt with mine yet.
That's right. And I have a special fee for you if that's the case.
Yes.
No, but so that this business of gifting property is not very well understood.
That's. I don't think I understood that completely. That clarifies some things with me, even because I've had other people say, well, I can give so much per year to my child, blah, blah, without any.
You can give as much as you want.
You can give as much as you want.
The difference is whether you file a gift tax return or not. Yeah. You never pay a gift tax. Never.
That's interesting.
You may, if you pay anything at all, it's when you have way over that number, and even then, it's not a gift tax. It's going to be the actual federal tax.
Awesome, good.
So, the reason that comes up so much is, we talk about our asset protection trust and how you have no access to the principal, right. And then I tell you can get access to principal if the trust distributes money to a child, and then the child can turn around and use it on your behalf. Well, the question I get so often that I actually made it a slide in my presentation is when you distribute it from the trust to a child, is that taxable income to them?
Yes.
And the answer is what I just said. The answer is no, for all the reasons that I just said.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when we come out of a trust like that, we do file the gift tax return. Because you can gift property. We recently had somebody had like 4 or 5 acres that they wanted to give their child. Mm-hmm. Circumstances changed in that the child wanted to build on it now, mm-hmm. and couldn't get a loan because they don't own the land they want to build on. And so they said, well, I always wanted my daughter to have this 5 acres, so can I gift it to them now? And I said, sure, just get it surveyed, carve out the meets and bounds description, and we'll gift that 5 acres to her through that back door where you can give it to the child.
Sure.
We'll give it to her as a gift. And so we do.
Yes.
So it happens. That's where it comes up most of the time with us, is the asset protection trust. Now, 5 acres ended up being more than $18,000 worth. So we filed a gift tax return.
Right.
And again, no big deal. They're just going to, at that person's death, they're going to look at all the sum total of their lifetime gifts. So let's take it, say $13.99 million. Let's round it off to 14. If you have $10 million at your estate at death, and they look and see that you have gifted away $5 million during your lifetime, then you've gone $1 million over that allotment, right? Mm-hmm. That's 15, and it's like we're rounding it to 14, right? Or mm-hmm. 1,000,001. You're going to pay estate tax, federal estate tax on the 1.01 million. Okay, that's how it works. Now they don't go get the money and bring it back; they're just bringing back the value.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is, it belongs to you, and you can give it away if you want. But at death, we're going to consider it yours for purposes of figuring out if you owe this estate tax.
Over the estate tax.
Now that is very, very high.
It is high.
There was a lot of talk about it coming back down. I think with the current administration, it's much less likely to happen because that's how it got so high in the first place. But we'll see. But I'm pretty confident it'll stay up there. And it was 13.6. And then in January, they usually do what they call like a cost of living or regular inflationary adjustment, where it just naturally went to 13.99. So it creeps up, but they can change it to be whatever they want it to be. And there was some talk about lowering it to 7 or 8 million in 26. I don't know if that's going to be a situation anymore. I've not heard about it, but I suspect it probably won't come down.
Probably not.
Probably go up if anything. And so, but it's something you have to keep up with.
Yeah.
And if you have a tax person, they should know and understand that.
I am generally against any other taxes.
I'm generally against most of them.
Generally against taxes, period.
I mean, I understand.
I understand we got to have them.
Taxes. Now,
we have to pay, for the services that we expect our government to provide. There are a lot of things they're providing that we didn't expect them to be providing.
Well, that's true. And I love the idea of the External Revenue Service.
Yeah,
I think some other countries need to pay tax
I
to
agree
us.
with that. That's a good idea.
I love the concept of things like when the current administration, last time in the first administration, made the comment that, we're going to build the wall and we're going to make Mexico pay for it.
Yeah.
That is just brilliant.
Well, that was good thinking, good idea.
Yeah.
I did hear that Mexico has agreed to put 10,000 of their own troops on the border.
Yeah, and I think that conclusion came in less than 48 hours.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So
and good for them. Glad they're doing it.
Well, and it's to their best interest to do that.
It really is.
I mean, not just because they want to avoid the tariff. And of course, there's been a lot of hype about the tariffs. Well, the tariffs have never been imposed yet.
They've not been imposed at all.
You got to understand when this president speaks, that sentence he says, like, I'm going to give you a 25% tariff, that's the first line of probably a long conversation of negotiations.
That's right.
I mean, and that's the case, and that's we came to a settlement that they're going to watch for 30 days, and if he's happy with it, they might do something else. But so you're right. I mean, and you can fight a war. You can fight a war without firing a single shot. You just bankrupt them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You destroy your enemy financially if you in the on the world stage. But anyway, it's not a political program, so we won't talk about that. But politics sometimes affects what we do.
Sure it does. Politics and laws and elected officials, they all have had a hand in where we are.
Yeah. I mean, and so it can change it for the better, it can change it for the worse.
That's right.
Yeah, but this area of law I don't experience a lot of continuous change like you do some other places.
Yeah. But this is a very in-depth area with a lot of laws that affect it. And like the 10-care laws, and that has nothing to do with trust writing or trust law. It just has to do with the 10-care healthcare system. Right.
Those laws can change often.
Yes. And
they don't often change what we do, but we're usually aware of those, especially during eligibility and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
So guys, looks like we're getting to the end.
We are. I can't believe this hour went by so fast today.
Like I say, welcome to the fastest hour on my week.
And we had a lot of good kind of some new stuff to chew on today, and that's good. But again, Stan Pierchoski, everybody, Bulletproof Estate Planning, estateplanstand.com.
And I'll have to go back to my office where I'll be alone.
Yes.
Well,
maybe you can find a sandwich day. You could go right down to the drugstore and get a good sandwich.
I could do that. I think my wife made some things and there were some leftovers, so I think I have a little something I have something to get me through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Listen, if you want to give me a call about anything we talk about, I except maybe today. Wait till the girls come back on Monday. But give me a call at 931-363-7222. Or if you want to sign up for that seminar, it's a real loose sign up. It's just call me and tell me you want to come and how many people are coming. Same number, 931-363-7222. It's Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law. Or you can send me an email. My email, you can go to my website at estateplanstand.com and you can get the email there, which is actually like Stan at PierchoskiEstatelaw.com.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
You don't have to memorize it. You just Estate Plan Stan will get you there. It'll also let you see my calendar and where I'm publicly speaking that you could come to, that sort of thing. So take advantage of that stuff. These seminars are great information, and I give the time freely, and I do it for educational purposes. We haven't mentioned it a lot, but once or twice that you are available for maybe public speaking. And if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know. But like if you've got a group or somebody like that you'd like to get together and have I've done it many times. I've done it for church groups. I've done it for small companies. The owner has me speak to the employees, and we offer special incentives to those folks so that something their employer can offer to them. Yeah. You say if you work with Mr. Stan on a plan, because you work here, you'll get incentive. I've actually spoke to several banks where I talked to the employees. There was a bank that people were saying, why are all these people coming in here and changing their bank accounts to name of the trust? And so I gave a seminar to them that was geared toward the banking end of it. Right. So anyway, but I'm more than happy to do that. You just got to call me and schedule it. All right. Until next time, Stan, Pierchoski Estate Law, everybody, 363-7222. Look him up online, estateplanstand.com. We'll see you every Friday from 8 to 9. All right. God bless, buddy.
Morning shows quite the slowdown last month, with less than half the number of new hires from December.
Fewer jobs than expected were created in January, 143,000. Economists anticipated 100.